All right. Okay. Here we are. Happy Easter, sir. It's good to have you back. How you been?
I've been great, and happy Easter to you too. How
Yeah,
are you
it's
doing?
I'm doing well. Busy, of course. In fact, I'm probably outdoors while this is playing for all the people listening live right now. Um, so yeah, I'm happy to have you here. We have an interesting one today. Um, and you know what? It I don't know if it fully jives with the holiday, but it definitely crosses into a spirit of something that you could say is more genuine than what you'd expect based on the premise. I guess I don't want to kind of delay the conversation any further right now. So yeah, let's jump into it, all proper and such. Welcome to Scripts on Saturdays, the only screenplay review show on the interwebs, discussing scripts both professional and amateur, circulating around Hollywood, giving you, the TV and movie-going audience, a behind-the-scenes and inside track on what writers are pushing and what producers are buying. I am your host, the Script Doctor, and joining me this week is Jake of 52 Movies a Year. So happy to have you back, sir. You had a fun vacation, which is always well deserved. Glad to have you here, especially for this script. How you been?
Oh, I've been great. Just happy to be here. This was a good script to read, and yes, my vacation was great. I'm ready to work again,
You're all
and
you're all refreshed and you're happy.
oh yeah, yeah. It's funny how that does that.
Uh, yeah, everybody needs a respite. And I love it too. And you know what? I think you picked a good time because it was still relatively cold. And now you're coming back, and it's like, oh yeah, look at that, spring, and light, and thus snow.
Yeah, I definitely skipped a snowstorm that we had hit us, and I didn't miss it one bit.
That's a sweet deal. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a sweet deal. And speaking of sweet deals, we actually are reviewing the number one script on the 2024 blacklist. It is titled One Night Only. It ranked number one with 60 votes, which is pretty high. It's written by Travis Braun. So, Jake, please share with our listeners the log line for One Night Only.
Two strangers scramble to find someone to sleep with on the one night of the year when premarital sex is legal.
That's right. So the synopsis of One Night Only is in a country where one night a year premarital sex is legal, Owen, a starry eyed romantic, gets dumped and hunts for a rebound. Across town, Hannah's ditched by her foreign lover, sparking her own quest for passion. They collide by chance, but instead of knocking boots, they team up to find each other's perfect fling. But will their quest actually satisfy their lust, or will it blind them of a potential love? So this has a really interesting premise. It's like The Purge, but instead of committing a crime, it's having a little intimate fun outside of marriage, whether you're single or, according to the screenplay, whether you are married. It is perfectly legal. I had apprehensions of this going forward because it felt like it was a tricky premise to pull off. But yeah, we checked it out. So Jake, tell me your initial thoughts, like from the log line to the first few pages of the story. What resonated with you as you started to turn the pages of One Night Only?
Yeah, my first impression on the log line was, okay, is it premarital or is it extramarital as well? And I almost wondered if it was typo or deliberate. And I think the script definitely cleared that up. Um, yeah, I immediately went right to the purge. And I thought, yeah, definitely interesting. Could be hard to do. Could be, I mean, I was pleasantly surprised with some of the depth that they went into, but also kept it vague enough, like it was not the fixation of their focus. But I felt like it it cut to the point. You didn't leave you too many questions when you didn't really need to dig down that route. But
No,
yeah,
the writer did a pretty good job outlining that recently, a senator had passed a law making premarital sex illegal, and this all came about because a new biosensor technology was introduced, uh, and for some reason, the country voted in favor of this, and it's a little perplexing, but it seems like it's the pendulum swinging a little bit too far to the other side of things. And what ends up happening is that you have this kind of um, clause in the law that says only one night of the year, I think it's like August 1st, from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., all bets are off. And premarital sex or extramarital sex is no longer legal. Illegal. And these biosensors are like this little red rose tattoo that's on your wrist. So we got like this cool sci-fi element on it. And when you either get married or when August 1st comes around for the hooking up day, that tattoo changes from red to green, basically saying you're good to go. And yeah, everybody kind of just makes arrangements to have some kinky experiences. I I like how they were able to get through it pretty quickly. Um, we don't know exactly how many years it's been like this, but I would say it's probably been maybe 4 or 5. Uh, because a lot
Definitely.
because a lot of thing it still seems relatively new, but it's also quite different. We're introduced to our main character, Owen, he's 27. He's kind of like boyish for his age, but he runs a pizza shop and he makes like the best pizza in New York, which is where we're located. And he's on a date with Clarissa, and he's clearly trying to uh, make a connection with this woman that he's been dating for I think a couple of years because they live together, and it's a really dark opening because Clarissa says that she doesn't want to spend the night with Owen because there's a guy at the pool who she's been chatting with, not dating but just chatting with, and she has this desire to experience what it might be like with him. And this, of course, breaks Owen's heart, who he's a hopeless romantic. He has a pizza shop, and he also is a fan of Winnie the Pooh stories, which was a surprise to me. I was not expecting that, but that was an interesting aspect. Um, Now, with that opening scene, I wanted to ask you, Jake, what impressions did you get from Clarissa and then Owen in response to her revelation that she's not looking to break up with him, but she is basically saying, I want to spend the next 12 hours with another man. Like that, what a way to introduce us to this concept.
I thought that was a great way to just jump right into the plot, I guess, and that supports the premise of one night a year rather than, push through details or explanations. You just let two characters talk for just a few words, and it kind of sets you up or at least draws you in enough to go, oh, how would I handle that? My initial impression was, I guess maybe I was knowing this as a, comedy, romantic comedy. I immediately thought of all the ones I've seen throughout my childhood and young adult years with my wife, and um, I thought of like every other, the John Hughes comedies and all that stuff. You've got the guy, that's a stereotypical guy. He's got a girlfriend that within a first couple of sentences you're going, okay, yeah, she's not the one for you.
Right.
And so I got that. I so jumped right into that. That was neither good nor bad, but I kind of felt like, oh, okay, I recognize this. I recognize this setup. Guy and his girlfriend conflict. Where will it lead? And I liked the back and forth. They weren't long. It's kind of like there was something charming about it. Say something. He doesn't. You wouldn't either. The writer could have went anywhere with it. Most of us would have yelled, scream, whatever. But where we're just reading the script, I thought there was some charm to it. I think it set up characters right off the bat to where I wanted to know more.
It really did because there's this term in screenwriting called kick the dog. And this is where your main character is the dog, and you, as the writer, have put them in a situation where they've been attacked in some way, whether it's physical or emotional, and you feel for them, you empathize with them, you see them as the underdog, and you want them to win. And they do this really out of the gate because Owen's introduction by basically saying like, the cards were really dumb this year because there's now Hallmark cards about
Yeah.
like Valentine's Day for getting down. One of them is like bow chicken wow wow, and it's just a
Oh, chicken
chicken
wow
on a
wow.
thing. I
Yeah.
mean, it's cheesy, but it completely shapes the culture in this film. Um, and and the other part too is that even when Clarissa says, "Hey, this is what I want to do," Owen is goes silent. Like he can't really say anything other than that he loves Clarissa, and she's like, "Say something else." And you realize what the dynamic is that she's safe with Owen, but she has
Yep.
desires for someone else. And Owen is definitely safe with Clarissa, and he's also enamored with her.
Yeah.
Um, and I thought it was a really good introduction because it's all done on one page. Like it's in and out. We do not dwell on it. It is effective. It hits hard. And then when we get to Hannah, what I found was kind of interesting is that there's the writers kind of showing how women are a bit more complex than men with this because Hannah's scene is a page and a half, is a half page longer than Owen's, and her situation is that she's in a cab. Uh, she's got some freckles, but she's got all this an edge to her. She's a personal assistant, and she's arguing with her boss, who is frantically looking for his Viagra medication. And she's telling him like, nobody goes through your drawers, nobody does this. This is where it's supposed to be. Uh, I am late for my own hookup, and I have not. I am not going to be babysitting you. I think her boss's name is like Derek or something.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
and and it's this funny conversation because it's also between her and then the cab driver who she's saying, "Hey, can you uh take a shortcut so that we can get here?" And the driver's saying, "Well, listen, lady, I can't go down this lane. It's one way." And she's like, "I will pay you $500 to go down this thing." And all of a sudden, he just peels off. And it really established the context here is that um, because a personal action has been prohibited by the government, um, and then they're given permission for one day to embrace it, people are like saving up money and pulling off deals and scheduling their whole world around this one night to essentially blow off some steam. And they are willing to pretty much like mortgage their house in order to make sure that they can have this moment. And it's not just the single people, it's the married people as well. I mean, there's a joke later on in the script where this one guy is talking about how he married and he fell in love with his wife and they got married so they didn't have to wait one day a year. But since they've been married, they still only do it one day a year. And
They hadn't had
tonight
sex in
he's
two
here in the club
years.
and his wife's with someone else. And it's like that
Yeah.
is dark. Um, but yeah, so Hannah, she's heading to this cafe because there's this exotic guy. I think his name's is it Sebastian? I can't remember. We don't meet him at all because he doesn't show up. But he's this guy, and we get an interesting narrative with this where we go into fantasies. Like these characters are they're so repressed by the outside world or depressed by the outside world that they end up having a lot of like sexual fantasies. And what's interesting is that the sexual fantasy is more on the intimacy side of it before we actually get into the sexual side. So like there's the flirtation, the romance, the like Hannah is having the fantasy of meeting her man who basically says, I would have waited all night, and I flew in early and um, it's the fact that I can only have 12 hours for you is never enough for when I want it to be the whole life and every day of the year and all that type of stuff. Like it's really showing that there's a little bit more depth, at least with these two characters, and it's not just about a carnal experience. So so seeing this chaos here, and then of course finding out. but like because we jump back to Clarissa and Owen, and Clarissa has this monologue about the other guy.
You, you know, it's the Sebastian Hanna. I was going to ask one quick point.
Sure.
I liked how it was a conversation from the real world that broke her out. I liked that. I liked the the noise or what was being said in reality got morphed into her fantasy with Sebastian, but then it didn't make any sense, and that's what snapped her out. I can't think of what that's called, of course, but um,
Well, I
I've
mean,
seen
yeah,
movies, and I think it works well. And
yeah, it's a fantasy with a prelap to snapping you back to reality, or at least the story's reality, as it were. Um,
yeah,
but
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off with
no,
that.
no, that's quite all right. Please, absolutely. But that's a great lesson to learn because what we're doing here with well, what the writer's doing here with this story is they're getting inside the head of the character, and instead of like telling us who this person is, they're using this fantasy interaction to kind of show us what this is. Like on the surface, when she's outside, she's talking about all she wants to do is get laid. It's been a year. She really wants to have, excuse me, to have this moment. And when she's getting into the cafe and she's going to the table where they're supposed to meet, her first fantasy is not just getting down and dirty. It's the romance that leads up to it. It's the praise and the compliments and a spark of something more. And I like how it contrasts with Hannah's actual behavior.
Yeah, you do see quite a contrast there because her last interaction was frantic, and then here it is in the and it feels like it's actually what's happening until you realize it's not.
Oh yeah,
But
and then when you go back to Clarissa and she's telling Owen the story about Zane Schweitzman from the pool, uh, you see where her mind is at, and it's not in sync with Owen, and it's definitely not in sync with Hannah. It's just like I wasn't looking at anything. We just started hanging out after practice, and I tried to put it out of my head, but the thought of being with him, it's too much. It's like yeah, it's not romance, it's lust. And this script does a great job at distinguishing those um, from the outside perspective, so from an audience perspective, but also blurring the lines from these characters' perspective. Because like one this all happens within the first 5 pages of Owen and Clarissa breaking up, finding out that Owen has an engagement ring in his pocket that he was probably mere moments from popping out and proposing. Uh, Hannah being distracted from her very dependent boss, and then her fantasies for Sebastian, and both of them getting disappointed within the first 10 pages.
yeah, when did you when did you question or wonder how it start to question or wonder how it worked specifically?
I started to question it. I started to question it when they did the news coverage because that's where they start saying, yeah, this particular senator managed to pass this bill instead of it outright out making it outright illegal 365 days of the year. There's that one night, but it's only 12 hours. Um, it made me think of like, okay, I was really wondering if we're going to see maybe a third character who would be starting in the East Coast and then flying, time zone to time zone so that he can get a few more extra hours uh, into the um, into the event, because that's what someone who's really wanting to get laid would do, especially if they
Yeah,
had a great deal of cash. Um, So yeah, like I was wondering, like I wonder how this works because we had like the tattooed lily on their wrists, and then when we get to the ticking clock where people are like doing the countdown to like the ball is about to drop, and then once the ball drops, it's the 12-hour timer, and now everybody's got 12 hours to get as much debauchery in as possible before they have to go back to normal. And as soon as that thing hits, it goes from red. The lily goes from like red to green, and then it's fair game. And here we are, everybody is starting to like literally like someone flipped a switch and now they're starting to go at it. There's cab drivers who are complaining about the couple in the back seat, getting
People
frisky,
in public.
people in public on the streets. There's clubs dedicated to this, apartments and stuff. So like we follow Owen when he goes home because well he doesn't go to his house because Claire lays this one thing on him, which is that yeah, I need the apartment tonight. So she hands him a Walgreens bag with all of his toiletries and stuff, and she says you'll have to stay at your mom's. And I'm like, that is even colder. Like they're really playing up the empathy for Owen here, where he's now got to walk around the street with this Walgreens bag of like his toothbrush and stuff, and all while his girlfriend is getting on with a guy in their bed, presumably.
Yeah. Kicked out of your house. She's got the the condom
Oh
and
yeah, that's the other part too. So
that
in this
became such
society,
a strong element of it.
in this
Not to say
society, for
there.
some reason, I think this might be a little bit too much of a stretch, but for some reason, in this society, um, any person can only buy one condom. That's it. You're only allowed one uh, at any given time, which is weird. It's like it's one condom sale per customer. So you could buy multiple, but you have to go to different stores to do that because each store is limited on one, which I think is very anti-capitalist in there because you're
Yeah.
compelling a company that is providing a contraceptive to basically say, oh, we have to greatly reduce our inventory and production so that we can control how much is out there. I would think that'd be the one part that would never be restricted because regardless of the legal aspect of it, for the people that are legal that maybe want to exercise contraception, they should be able to get as many condoms as they want, just as
Yeah.
we are today. Whether you get to use them all before they expire is irrelevant. The option should still be there. And I thought that was really weird because you would think, especially the birth control and contraceptive companies, which are quite large, they would probably be lobbying a lot for not such a restriction on their business, even if it is alluded to an immoral clause that has been passed with Congress. So yeah, it's that was the one thing that I felt was kind of weird. But
Yeah.
maybe
They
I'll throw.
kind of
Yeah, go
leaned
ahead.
into they leaned into a couple of little things that kind of made it sound like there was a story within the story of divorce is harder to get, apply for
Yeah,
a divorce,
you have to
stuff like
petition for a divorce.
that.
It doesn't matter if both parties want it. Yeah. So,
Yeah, yeah.
um,
So I think there was something that they were kind of hinting at, and I don't, I don't, I don't fault it any for that. But you noticed it there, and there were small little things. So you're almost thinking there is more to this than just a simple setup, even though, it's kind of like more just that there's layers, I guess.
yeah, there's definitely layers. Because at first, when I was reading it, I was wondering, well, wait a minute, one condom per person, difficulty for divorce. Maybe is it more like, oh, is only one condom per person for sale on this night, or is it in general because people are stocking up for what have you? We don't know. Those questions are left unanswered.
Yeah.
But
Kind of allow the scarcity and the ticking clock and which it would have worked just as easy to have, well, we're all sold out or, which they were at certain points.
Oh,
But
absolutely. We'll get to that in a moment. But the
yeah,
other part too, which I thought was fascinating, is that even if you are a widow or a widower, you still get the Lily tattoo, um, especially if
yeah.
you're in like your 60s or 70s. So I thought that was kind of interesting, is that there's no age exceptions, but there are age restrictions to the point where even as a kid you get the tattoo, but it doesn't ever switch on or off until you hit the age of I think 21, is it? Or
Oh, you know what?
19?
I don't remember. I'll look that up, but I do remember I thought it would be either 18 or 21.
Yeah.
Probably.
Okay, so I'm gonna put you not necessarily on the spot, but I think you would probably have the best reaction to describing this. But what happens when Owen gets home to his mom's?
Yeah. Um, and I was thrown off, and maybe that was good because it introduces Linda and says her age, but you don't, it just says Linda's home.
Yeah.
And I guess maybe I'm too spoon-fed and I wanted to say that's his mom, but it was also kind of funny the way I read it was he's just talking to and she's complaining. He said, "Really? The pool boy?" So it's obviously somebody that he knows, and
Hmm.
we know he's going to his mom. So but it took me a second to go, okay, oh, that's his mom, but I think that was kind of part of the humor.
Yeah.
Um, they're having this frank talk that you would only have in this world of one night a year and then through the conversation you realize that she cares about him and then at one point he even does call her mom, but
Yeah.
the shock that she's like, well, you can't stay here. Because I know your father's been gone for a while, but I want to. And it kind of fed into the sad sack Owen character of like, man, I can't catch a break. He would be fine just hanging at home with his mom's house so he doesn't have to be alone. But he even gets kicked out of that. And then the the insult to injury, Rick's giving him advice.
Oh
And
yeah, the
like he's there. Oh, hey, I could almost picture. Oh, hey, how you doing, Owen? You know.
yeah. He's just yeah, because Rick is the mom's boyfriend or a family friend now that has become a boyfriend of sorts.
Yeah,
And the fact that it's now become so casual with regards to this conversation because you've literally designated this 12-hour period, everybody knows what everybody's doing. So you can't even hide it. Like you could, there's no discretion
yeah.
anymore, which is the
I,
expense of this. Yeah.
yeah, I love the way that the script went straight from that's when you hear Rick's voices after his mom said, "Oh, I'm going to be having sex with Rick." I was like, "Oh, hey, Owen, how you doing?" It just
Yeah.
that made me laugh out loud. Sorry to hear about Claire. And it was just that was a good scene, I think.
That was a good scene, and we then go into like this type of interesting little brief montage where Owen is going looking for a place to stay, and every hotel, of course, has no vacancy available. And then we cut from Owen and we go to see Hannah, who she's been at the cafe all this time. Nobody has shown up. The cafe's about to close, and she's kicked out essentially incredibly disappointed that she stood up. So she heads back home to her apartment where she's got a roommate named Aria. I think it's Aria.
Yeah.
And Arya's not interested in having sex tonight either because she took a job to babysit a 13-year-old for like 5 grand, which is like that's pretty cool. That's a pretty good rate for a babysitter.
Well, it shows how desperate her parents were.
Yeah, like either desperate the parents or the mom who may be a
They're
single mom,
like,
what have you. But what's also funny is that uh, this writer really does capture a 13-year-old boy, at least at the time when you and I were of that age, where
yes.
we were a little bit bravado. And if we saw a beautiful woman, we'd be not very hesitant to call that out. I mean, we'd be more intimidated about calling a girl our own age beautiful and stuff, but like for an adult, it's a lot easier because there's most likely going to be a rejection. So you're able to kind of like practice a little bit with your game, knowing that they're going to roll their eyes and dismiss you. But this guy, like one of his first lines is he sees Hannah, he's like, "You realize you're a smoke show?" And I'm like, "Oh, okay, this is funny because now you've got this boy who's at peak hormones, like, a couple years into his hormones, and then it's only going to get higher. And he is trying to get some game." And both women who are pushing 30 are clearly mocking him and saying this is not going to happen. And at the same time, while Arya is just, telling Hannah, why don't you just hang out with me, drink some wine, lay off. And Hannah's like, no, I can't do that. I can't go another year. I can't go. Yeah, I can't make this last year between sex has been tough. I can't do this again. Uh, and what's interesting is that these are low stake aspects, like overall, but it's framed into a high stake part because what the subtext of this relationship is that people are being denied that extra stage of intimacy. Um, and we don't even know, like, we also know that we learned that the technology of this biosensor relates to all intimate aspects. So essentially, like, beyond kissing, you're going to trigger that thing, and then you're going to go to jail for violation, which is crazy. That how restrictive that is. So you can't even have, like, personal fun with this device because the hormones will activate the
Exactly.
biosensor. Um, and all I'm thinking about is like, my gosh, if someone isn't able to get lucky one day a year for a couple of years, especially a man, they're gonna have a really difficult time with their prostate because
That's true.
it's gonna be a nightmare when you're not able to exercise that muscle. And it's just such a weird
Yeah,
thought to pop into your head, but it's like this.
but
I
it
mean,
kind of does.
yeah, it kind of does.
When I
Um,
was trying to figure out how it worked, I was also thinking, well, maybe it was when he sensed two people with a tattoo close together. Then I actually went there and I thought, well, maybe when someone's by themselves, they they're going, oh, that's not illegal. I
but
thought
we
that that would come up, but then that's not really even addressed in this
no
in the
no
story. But it
it's
would take away the tension of the night
it would
too.
take away the tension of the night, but they kind of allude to it because
Yeah.
in Hannah's adventure, she ends up meeting the guy that invented or that invested in the technology. Um,
Yes.
and this happens shortly after as Hannah is heading out. And
Oh,
she asks like Ariel, like, okay, I'm in this new red dress. How do I look? And then the kid says like a fat snack, and it's like, oh my God. And,
you know what it really reminded me of?
mhm.
Back to the old teen comedies of the 80s and 90s,
Yeah.
where usually it was the kids, one of the girl's friends, little brother or neighbor kid, the annoying kid that does dare say anything. So
Hmm.
it kind of brought me back to that. I can picture that in like the Molly Ringwald and the annoying
Oh
teenage
yeah,
kid
like
that's Ted
John.
Stifler's younger brother, stuff like that,
Yeah, like the John Cryer type or Anthony
Yeah.
Michael Hall thing. Like,
Yeah,
I mean, the last line we get out of that kid when she's heading out is that he's like, "You're worth going to jail for." I'm like, you know what? That's a good line.
that's a good line.
Like
She
that's a
says,
good.
"What?"
And then Arya's like, "I'm very worried about you."
I liked his line when she says, "What are you, 13?" He's like, "Inches."
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
like,
He
"This
just like it's
kid's."
just classic wit. Um,
Yeah.
all for one little chance. And I think it's quite funny. Um, but there's also a nice balance to the fact that this has some soft drama elements to it. But we've got like Owen, he can't find a place, so he ends up finding a bar, and he meets this girl named Sarah. But as he's getting drunker, he keeps calling her Sandra. And what's funny is that she's showing interest in him, but he's not registering it because he's so distraught over Claire until she finally kind of breaks the tension and says, "Hey, yeah, let's you know, we can solve each other's problem." He's like, "Okay, great, let's do that." And she's like, "Do you have a condom?" And he's like, "No." And he's like, "Is that a problem?" She's like, "Yes, because it is during my time of the month." And there's that other factor, right? So you have that extra element for all the women whose cycles are lined up with that day. It's a high risk day for them, higher than most, and so this puts us onto a mini quest, which is that Owen needs protection. Um, and then Hannah, she already has a condom that she bought earlier and has been saving for this, but at some point she loses it, and so she now needs to get another one as she's trying to look for somebody. And but before they even start getting to the shop, Hannah and Owen have their what you would call like not so much a meet cute, but like a meet vomit of sorts. because
Yeah.
like Owen is stumbling around. He's drunk. He's trying to get to find a condom, and he bumps into Hannah and then immediately throws up on her shoes. And he's trying to apologize, but the vomit it just keeps coming up. So he's looking even more like disheveled and unruly. So Hannah has to then rush back home, clean off her shoes. She's losing hours, and then get back out there to try and find someone. And this is kind of where she meets a couple of weird people. She meets like, a biker, an elderly man, the investor guy, the poor dude that finds out that, his wife is spending the night with another man. And even when they don't have to worry about the biosensor, he's still not getting any action with his spouse. And I mean, it does make it really dark, but yeah, we've got like Owen's on this ticking clock. He's going to every single pharmacy, every single shop. He finally finds the one place that has a condom. And it's expensive. It's like $200 because it's the last one in stock. And what's even funnier is that when Owen kind of comes in there to try and get service, um, a woman comes out of the back. A woman comes out of the back who works there, and then a stock boy also comes out shortly afterwards, and you realize, oh, they were just in there, getting down and dirty. And so as Owen is saying, okay, I want this condom. How much? It's $200, cash only. And he's just like, okay, what? I don't have the cash, and of course he's pointed to an ATM that's in the store, and there's a couple of them there. But Hannah is at the ATM and she's forgot her pin. So she's trying to remember her pin to get the money. And Owen just beelines it to there. He's like, the first one who can get the money out and pay for it gets the condom. So, and he's got an easy pin, which is the a little nod to Spaceballs with 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
Uh,
He
and
looks
you
at her
think,
as he's typing it.
yeah, he looks at her as he's typing, and he's like, easy thing to remember. But what ends up becoming a nice little twist of fate is his bank has insufficient funds. Doesn't have the money to take it out, and so he's freaking out. And he's like saying, "I'm going to call the bank and get this all sorted out." And then Hannah finally remembers her pin, gets the cash out, gets the condom, and Owen is defeated. Which is funny is that this is establishes that now the rivalry between Owen and Hannah, who they Hannah keeps on accusing Owen of following her, and Owen is actually always at the location before Hannah gets there. So, I mean,
That's
it's a nice
true.
little thing here. Um, how did you find the how did you find that tension of the whole racing to withdraw cash scene go for you? What were your like? I personally can't remember seeing a scene like that, so I wanted to get your perspective.
You know what? I liked it. I thought it was cool, especially where they had already introduced, and it was a little bit because at first when he threw up on her, I thought, well, that's not good, and I wouldn't say I was critical of it, but I was like, man, I'm not how they going to recover from that? And but the fact that it led her to having to change her clothes and all that stuff. But I liked it because their banter back and forth, where as she's trying to remember her pin, he's like kind of getting cocky, like, and he types his in, and I could picture. I could picture it in my head. I could see that scene, but then the like sparring of the who's going to get it that we as the audience are witnessing. And I thought it was cute. I thought it was a good scene. Usually there's not two ATMs side by side, but was it two ATMs side by side or just that they were fighting over the same pad? That's the only part I didn't follow along with.
Uh,
All
I
right,
I I
it's a
think they were
little
in the
bit.
same corner, and they were side by side, but not the same pad. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess I thought, well, that's strange, but the whole thing's strange too.
Oh,
But
yeah. I mean,
but I liked how they were able to talk to each other. I mean, in reality, yeah, you'd be in your own cubicle, but it set it up. I thought it was good. It overcame like you said, it turned them into rivals. I liked that.
yeah, and it was good. It was a good type of sparking rivalry because like Hannah wins. She gets her condom. She goes back to the guy that she found who has disappeared. So she's out of luck again. Owen manages to go to an urgent care center And this one I thought was kind of funny, but I'm like, oh, wait, this is actually kind of reasonable because a medical facility should have contraceptives, um, especially in this type of society. And then we got something that's kind of like it's a little bit different from like I'm familiar with it, but like for some of the Canadian audience out there, um, so like when we have sizes of condoms, it's usually the size itself means the quantity. Like, oh, you have an extra large pack of condoms. Oh, it's not the ring diameter, it's just you have more in the box as opposed to it. Where in the United States they actually have size a variety of sizes. Um, that are very specific, and then they have their quantity as well. And what's funny here is Owen comes into urgent care and he's like, "Do you guys have condom?" And the nurse is like, "Well, what's the size?" And Owen goes, "Regular." And nurse says, "Nope." And Owen's like, "Small, large, I don't care, whatever." And the nurse says, "We only have the big ones." And she holds up like a Magnum 3XL condom with a picture of an elephant on the wrapper. And I'm like, okay. I mean, I don't think those ones actually exist, but like I do know that there's ones that are definitely of wider things in the United States. Um, which oddly enough, even the largest ones in the US are the average ones that are up here. It's just weird. Like we just don't have anything smaller. And if we do, it's actually to put on your finger to cover a cut, not for protection.
Yeah, you get those, you pass those out to your buddies and say, okay, here you go.
Yeah,
And
yeah. You used to tease your friends about those back in
oh
the,
yeah.
yeah. Um, but of course, Owen says, like, whatever it is, I'll take it. And then the nurse says, it won't fit you. And the nurse's argument is that I can't give it to you if it won't fit. And then Owen, of course, trying to lie, says it'll fit. And it's this banter, it's this back and forth. It's like, well, you said just regular. It's like, I lied. Prove it. And so what is Owen supposed to do at that point? There's two options, right? He either walks away or he drops trow to try and prove that he can fit. Um, but the writer goes into a third option, which is he just lunges for the condom, gripping it beneath the protective glass, and so yeah, the nurse is screaming for security and then beating his hand with a stapler, which I thought is pretty. That's a decent gag. Like that's a good sight gag of sorts. Yeah, and the desperation is there. The nurse fending off a frantic guy who just wants some protection.
I liked that scene particularly too. When I first read it, I kind of thought they're leaning a little too heavy on everything bad happens to Owen,
Hmm.
you know. But in retrospect, there's a reason why he didn't have the money. There's a reason why he's drunk. There's a reason why he's now desperately trying to get this one. And so they all kind of weren't just, we picked one character to be mean to, but I thought they did such a good job of describing these visual gags that
That you can see how they could play out. Yeah, like
yeah, and even just ending on he's trying to get it and going to the next scene, you're just happy you're just happy to see he made it out of there. And he always just seems to be wherever she's going. That was another part of, I thought, a little bit of humor. That
yes,
it's
because
kind of a humor. Yeah.
I mean, the thing is that it's not trying to be as in your face as you expect it to be, but it's trying to find like the desperation, like the humor's coming out of the desperation of it. It's not a convoluted
Yeah.
joke. There's very much a cause and effect attitude to this. And then that takes us over to Hannah, who she finds this guy named Levi, or yeah, Levi, who's black leather jacket owns a motorcycle, all the bad boys, sexy tropes there,
Yep.
and he takes her, I guess, to this loft that he has and she's all ready to go. And what's interesting is that every time they get really close, he kind of pushes her away a little bit, as if he's either delaying the catharsis of it, or teasing around the anticipation. But as he keeps doing this, Hannah is now challenging him, like, "What's going on? Like, why are you not jumping my bones?" And of course he's just like saying, "Oh, well, I want to go somewhere. There's this party at the Labyrinth I was supposed to do. So I'm kind of thinking and planning my time and he's offering drinks and stuff. And it's all distraction that Hannah is actually kind of getting really upset with because and this goes into the contrast where she was so excited about Sebastian that she had the fantasy, But now that that's gone, it's no longer about the fantasy and the romance. It's about just the carnal experience. And before they can even like really get into it, um, police lights surround the apartment building and spotlights like flood into the loft that they're in, and then the police essentially just crash through the doors and grab Levi because apparently he's in violation somehow, like his biosensor is pulsing red, it's not green. And we kind of find out that he was serving a 10-year ban for violating the mandate, you know, several months, if not years earlier. And they've now pulled Hannah into the police interrogation room just to find out what she knows and if she's done anything. And we find out that there's this like sensor so that you can scan the thing to find out if they've ever violated their biosensor code. And she's losing hours now uh, from finding, a fling because she found the one guy that not only did he violate the law on February, but he had also been with like a few other women already earlier that night, who I guess reported him because when they noticed the tattoo was blinking, and 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 that just really messes up with Hannah. So now it's, I guess, what, like it's just past midnight. So there's like only 7 hours left, which is still plenty of time, but she's tired and hungry, and we meet the guy who invested in it, who says he looks at all people as like $5, but he's also investing in this thing that develops like kind of a shield on the Lily
Walk it.
tattoo. And he's like, if this goes off, I'm gonna probably look at people like they're $8.
Because he knows everybody's getting that one
Yeah.
too. They
Oh,
had to get the
exactly.
one, and then they're all going to choose to get that one.
Yeah, and then what's funny is that as she gets out of the interrogation room and she sits down on the bench, she notices that Owen is actually sitting right next to him. And this one is causes her to roll her eyes and then say, make that accusation again. Are you following me? And Owen is like, how am I following you? Like you sat down next to me. I've been here already. And of course he accuses her of stealing his condom, which she bought and then didn't use, and they're having a little bit of a conversation until Hannah asks like, okay, now I got to know, why are you here? Why are your pants missing? Like why is your wrist got a burn on it? And we get into a flashback. And personally, I don't like flashbacks, but this one works because a Hannah has set it up with a specific question, and we get a visual of Owen looking far worse than when we last saw him. And so we now get a mini story. Do you want to share with the
Yeah,
listeners this flashback that Owen is embarrassed about?
yeah, and yeah. So he's sitting at a bus stop swiping through Tinder, and he's
Yeah, he's become that
I
guy now.
and he's looking. You can see he's looking and looking and looking, and then someone swipes for him too, and asks if he's in the city, and he's like immediately right on it.
Yep.
And then I liked how they start. I like the way they jumped him. They didn't show him traveling places. They just showed him places
Hmm.
most of the time because you knew he was about to walk into something. About this time in the movie, you'd be going, "Oh yeah, what's about to happen?" And plus, you knew he got roughed up. But he's describing, "Okay, I'm at the end of the trail," and the voice on the phone, the woman that the Danica, she he's just happy to he's just happy someone chose him, and he's pretty optimistic about it. That inner voice is kind of going off in his head, going, he's realizing how alone he is, but he's still trudging on because he's that desperate. He even questions, how do you know I'm not a murderer? She's like, because I am.
Yeah, like, and that's a
And
tease too, which is funny.
yeah, and I like, and I guess his apparently his name was Winnie the Pooh on Tinder, but that was
Mhm.
funny. Um, because she says, "Are you Winnie the Pooh?" And
Yeah, which is weird because you think, well, why not Christopher Robin? Because that's the human.
yeah, that's true. That is true. Um, at first, I thought that was a little cheesy, but you know what? It's not. I mean, it kind of paid off through the whole thing. Not really as a payoff, but it was something consistent. So,
Mhm,
but he meets this this Danica, she's 35, and in the park,
mhm.
and he's all alone. It's dark, and she looks like she's, well, not really rough, but
Well, she's sexy, but like got an edge to
but
her. Yeah.
but yeah, Badaj, yeah, that's perfect. Um, and she's kind of roughing him up a bit, and he's there with it, but obviously, his character is a little nervous about it, and
Hmm.
obviously she's driving the whole thing. He's just like happy to be there, and before he knows it, he's handcuffed to the park bench as she's pushing it to to move it on to move forward, and
Yeah, because she gets like almost like she takes off everything except for her bra. So she's really
yeah,
like playing the honeypot on him. And then zip ties his hand to the bench, starts taking his clothes, finds the ring box, and is
and
very happy about that.
yeah, I mean that's, and clearly she was there to rob him.
Hmm.
And I liked that she picks up the phone and she's like, you can tell she's describing to another Mark. Oh yeah, and
Yes.
just down the path. She's setting up her next one. And yeah, and even while this is all happening, he's just a step or two behind, like, are you robbing me, as he's being robbed?
Yep. And
And it kind
then
of really played into his character.
oh, it really did because it was just shocking, but it's also like, yes, I can believe this would be a great gimmick for people to, rob people. Like all you have to do is just get like a lonely guy or lonely woman somewhere, get them into a vulnerable state, tie them up to the bench, take their clothes, take their money, and then move on to the next one. And and I'm like that I could believe that that would work in this one. What makes it kind of funny is that as Owen is trying to get off the bench and then break the zip tie, he gets found by the police. And of course, and he's like, basically, he's disheveled by that. But as soon as he realizes that they're here, he's like, "Do you guys have wire cutters?"
I like that line because he's not guilty of anything.
Right.
He's not acting guilty or ashamed. He's consistently like innocent. Like,
Eh,
oh, there's the police. Hey, do you guys have wire cutters?
But
Where
but he's
someone else would be going embarrassed, he's just like, oh, hey, you guys can help me.
yeah, but
But
you
kind
can
of in an innocent way.
yeah, it's an innocent way, but you also get this like defeated way where he's just like,
Yeah.
I can't right now. Um, and
And
then
I love how when
yeah,
we all see that play out in his head. And, but to answer her question, he goes, they're at the police station. They got me for jaywalking.
yeah.
And I liked that visual because you see the whole visual,
Hmm.
and that, like you said, the flashback you don't really care for, but it's not abused. It's not like it's the third or fourth or fifth one. The whole story's flashbacks, but we get to see it. But then we get to see his reaction of, is he going to tell her what happened? He just says jaywalking, and
Yeah.
clearly something worse happened. That was a great visual joke set up verbally.
Yeah, it was well done. And then of course Hannah calls him out on that, says like it doesn't make sense that they take almost all your clothes for jaywalking.
Well,
And
I
then
thought it seemed a little unorthodox as well.
and I mean I like the fact that he's rolling with it, but it also shows like a little bit of wit too. And
Right.
of course, like the officer comes in and tells Hannah that she's good to go, and then turns to and he's like, "Hey, it's your lucky night. We found her trying to pawn your stuff." And of course, Owen is trying not to admit, like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what he's talking about. What are you talking about? It's like, oh, well, a lot of guys get scammed tonight. Nothing to be ashamed of. And then of course Owen comes clean and says, "Yeah, I did." And And yeah, so he gets his stuff, he puts on his pants, he gets his ring back, like everything, his phone, all that stuff, and you're like, wow, that is a very lucky night because you get robbed in New York, you're never getting a closure. You just it's not happening.
Oh
Um,
yeah, yeah. You're lucky to just make it out,
yeah,
not get your stuff back.
exactly. And so what's funny is like, they're the two of them, Owen and Hannah, they're leaving the police station together and they're finally having a conversation. And Owen is kind of saying like, listen, like he's getting disoriented by or sorry, he's getting disillusioned by the fact that romance is now dead. Like he believed it up until this point and then he realized no, it's not about romance anymore. It's all about just the sex. And he's making an argument and he's trying to, you know, frame it in a way that it's nothing. It becomes meaningless, and that's why we're stuck here and challenging the feelings of um, like what it was like back in the day where you could have sex as many times as you want and then watch Netflix afterwards. And Hannah is trying to deny that. She doesn't want to be reminded about how about the person that stood her up or and stuck here with you. And so Owen is like, well, since I'm the only one here and you can't find your guys, why don't we just get it on? And of course, Hannah is stunned by that. Like it's no, and starts laughing. Um, and of course, Owen is a bit defensive. He's like, we keep meeting up. Maybe it means something, and maybe we should. And you've got a condom, and I've got the equipment to fit a condom. And she thinks that's like that is not a reason. And and yeah, it was like Owen reveals that he was dumped earlier, to which she's like not too surprised by that, and so she decides that she's going to head off to that party at the Labyrinth, and Owen decides to join her. And but the thing is, Hannah has no idea any of the details of this party, what's going on. Maybe it's public, maybe it's not. But we get them at Soho, and the Labyrinth is completely empty. It's dead, and they're really upset because even Owen is saying like you can't go to the Labyrinth, it's gonna suck, and he's just like how do you she's like how do you know it's gonna suck? It's like it will suck. Why wouldn't it suck? It's the Labyrinth. There's everybody's already gonna be hooking up there. It's gonna be terrible. And when they finally get to the Labyrinth, yeah, it's closed down. There's nobody there at all. But as you said before, like most of the script, we skip kind of the journey process and then get to the location. But here, because we've got Owen and Hannah together, we actually see a little bit of the journey. Like they're on the subway together and they're talking. And what's interesting is that Hannah shows that she kind of has an affinity for older guys, one of which is being this 50s actor named Douglas Pierce, who is in a revival of Sweeney Todd. And it's funny because she's the ways that she describes him and her crush on that guy is a schoolgirl crush or an adolescent teenage girl crush, like when like in the late 90s where all the girls were just head over heels for Leonardo DiCaprio. Like that's this dynamic that Hannah is sharing on the page. Uh, so like what were you thinking, Jake, when all of this stuff was kind of going down? We're like now we've kind of put these two together. The proposition is put out there. Hannah rejects it, but she hasn't completely disassociated Owen yet. What were how did you take that type of relationship? Did you buy into it? Did like
I
yeah, share your thoughts on that.
I did. I bought into it and I thought it was a good element. It kind of brought them both back to what the script is really trying to do is you got this night of debauchery and yet you see people hooking up all over the place, but two people we just happen to be following, they have that chance. They could, but they don't. And it's because they're looking for something else. But what they're looking for is the idea of what they're experiencing and kind of taking for granted. So we kind of get to see, oh, obviously this is what This is what at this point we want it to happen.
Hmm.
We want them to get together, and we're just waiting to see how it plays out. But it was good that they were obviously rejecting each other, because if they had just jumped right onto it, they wouldn't have been the people that they were, even though that's what they're looking for. They're just participating in this world that everybody else is
Hmm.
participating in. But yet when they meet something and they kind of starting to have one of the real genuine relationships, at least that they're looking for, they just don't recognize it. So
Oh,
it
yeah, exactly.
and slowing down and going the same direction, doing the same thing at the same time, that was a good kind of a symbolic look. But yes, also going, yeah, but that's not what I had in mind. This isn't what I had in mind. I'm not going to do this out of desperation.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, like they're looking for something a little bit more. What's interesting is on that train where they're talking about like, Douglas Pierce, Owen is making the argument that, well, you're not going to find Douglas Pierce, but I'm here and maybe we should just and he does this like pro and con thing. And
Hmm.
so like, pro, like you have a condom. She's like, con, I find you annoying. And then Owen's like, well, I also find you very annoying. So that's a common interest. So that's technically a pro. So two pros. And I'm like, oh, that's a good logic spin there. Um, which goes circles back to like, Hannah saying you're not my type. My type's a guy like Douglas Pierce. He's like he's old. Um, and Owen challenges that. It's like maybe your type is wrong. Maybe that's why it has been working out. And now we're getting into the part like, well, why is Hannah, as beautiful as she is, single? And Hannah can't answer that, which is funny. And then Owen says, "Bro, we're both attractive people." And they get off the subway. He's still doing the pros and cons things. And of course, Hannah's like, wait, you're attracted to me? He's like, no, that's not what I said. And she's like calling him out. It's like, yeah, you kind of did. And he's like, I like your face. You have a nice face. I like looking at it. And that takes Hannah back. Um, and of course, she decides to like repay the compliment, but she doesn't know what to say. And I like what the writer does in this part where he says like, Hannah studies him for a long beat, feeling herself drawn in, about to say something, then quickly says, "You're tall." And then Owen sees right through that, says, "You're going to say something else." And then now she's in denial. And this scene plays out as that whole hard to get flirtation aspect. And it can be played out like where she's doing that deliberately for him or she's in full denial. And either way, it would kind of work because now you've got both these characters have gotten under each other's skin. And and they as they head to the labyrinth club, once they get there, we find out that Hannah wants to be swept off her feet. She likes the idea of romance, and and yeah, and then Owen is trying to like double down, says, "Hey, like romance doesn't exist, not since this law was passed. Because if it did exist, the mandate wouldn't fix would have fixed this."
Yeah.
Um, and everyone's just still out for their own interests. The love romance, it's all become dead because of this moral purity rule that has been imposed on everybody. And basically, they're trying not to. Well, like Hannah is trying to like argue against it, but it completely stops the moment when they realize, yep, the labyrinth is closed. It's dark, it's empty, nobody's there. She gets upset that she gets upset that Owen was right, and then Hannah starts getting phone calls from her boss Derek again, uh, and she just ends up silencing it and not answering him
And
at all.
and he's kind of helping her out. Hey, how about this guy? Ooh, my boss? No.
Not only is he's way too old, he's also gay.
Yeah.
uh, and then what's funny is like he's trying to get like know her. He's like, so what do you do? And like you're a personal assistant. That's your dream. She's like, yeah, I moved all the way over here uh to be the personal assistant of a guy who's looking for freshly legal boyfriends. And then she reveals like she actually came out here. She came out to New York to actually write a musical because she knows how to play an instrument, but she's never really kind of done anything yet. It's all like a lot of artists' dreams when you go to the big city. Your first goal is make sure you have a stable home that you can afford so that you can go out and explore your dream. But in such an expensive city, you spend most of your time working to pay for that house or that apartment and not a lot of time finding what your passion.
Yeah.
Um, and Hannah, of course, is trying to spin this around as the fact that her dream is kind of fluttering away, and she's like, "Well, what's your dumb idea?" And he's like, "Well, I got a pizza shop. I make pizzas." And she's like, "Really? That's a dumb idea." He's like, "Well, I mean, I'm kind of good for it, and I kill and it's a good pizza shop. I'm trying to open it up to be bigger and better things." And she she laughs and she says, "It's been hours. I'd kill for a pizza. I'm starving right now." He's like, "Oh, let's go." And of course, Hannah's like, "Come on, we can't go. Everything's closed." He's like, "I own my own pizza shop. Like that's cool." Like we find out that he's kind of a business owner, and then he says, "Yeah, people say I make some of the best pizza in town." And then Hannah's like, "No, Gianni's makes the best pizza in town." He's like, "Well, that's where I work. Those are my recipes." And there's your second spark, right? The first one being like he compliments her face, second one being like, "I am a gourmet pizza chef."
Yeah.
And she is like surprised. And before they're able to even get up and go to his shop, where you're thinking like, "Oh, this is it. This is the moment where they're going to have a meal and bond over that and probably get into it." This random limousine pulls up. This gorgeous woman in a fur coat named Nia comes out and she says, "Hey, you guys looking for a party?" And you're like, "What?" This kind of thing just out of the blue. I would say it's a convoluted obstacle, but it does it does provide something of an extra challenge for the script, and that was to show this underworld that exists as a result of this new law, because uh, like Nia brings Hannah and Owen over to this back alley where there's this unmarked steel door. They knock on it. Nia uh, gets by the bouncer with Hannah, but the bouncer, who is also a woman in a black dress, just will not let Owen in at
I
all.
like that. Yeah, the typical club. All the women can go in, but no men.
And the men are kicked out. So
Yeah.
now we've separated Owen and Hannah. Owen is disappointed because he was actually kind of psyched out to, make her a pizza and hang out some more. But we follow Hannah, which is going through like this abandoned train station, and it's a party with tons of gorgeous women all around. And lo and behold, as she's kind of mingling with this group, uh, Douglas Pierce is up there, and she's like shocked, like, "Oh my God, the guy that I want is here." And she's noticing that some of these beautiful women, they're each being given like an emerald earring. And this one kind of threw me off because I didn't understand. Like, I thought at first, oh, is this the device that guy was talking about to, you know,
Oh, to
cancel out
block.
the censor? What was your thoughts about this club and how it was being presented and the weird atmosphere that Hannah was brought into?
I took it as either they got the earring when they were purchased or indicated they're for sale or available.
Hmm.
As this is, and maybe it's through reading it a little further because I was like, okay, yeah. And she noticed a lot of people have this single emerald earring, so it signifies them as separate. Um, and I think I kind of took it as like, oh yeah, this is how the guys know who to buy or to bid on or who's available or who's an because I didn't know if at the time I didn't know, but a little bit later it says 50K. So like, oh, okay. And then I was like, oh, so here it is. Another people can make there's another element to this world where there's, sex tourism and everything's catered towards marketing for this one night of the year. But then now you have this underground club where, all right, you're attractive and people will come and bid on you.
Yeah, which is weird.
Yep.
Um,
Yep. But if someone can think of it, someone would do it.
yeah, and it seems that's the case. Now, what's funny here is that everyone says like the minimum bid is like 50,000, so it's all worth considering. So the question that I'm wondering is like, okay, so Hannah's in there, she's being bid on. Who's collecting, and is she gonna get a cut? or did
Exactly.
like we don't know.
Is it
eh,
just to help people meet people that they would normally meet? Does it go to the girl? Does it go to, yeah.
yeah,
It
like
did, it never did clarify, but it just kind of showed scarcity and picking what you want and kind of like maybe the underground black market appeal of it. But
yeah. I mean, I mean, the thing is, like, it's definitely a high profile club, but it's in a seedy neighborhood, and it's there's a lot of things going question around. And then what I found was kind of comical is we cut back to the limousine where Owen is sitting next to the driver, and he's mocking and scoffing at her like being swept off her feet and thinks she just knows people and all the type and stuff. And the driver's just, oh yeah, yeah. He's like, well, it is what it is. And then the driver says, hey, you can make me a pizza and then we have sex. And Owen's like, well, I like the enthusiasm, but I'm not into guys. And the driver's like, neither am I.
neither am I. Yeah.
And it is just like, oh, it's just loneliness. It's like, okay, you've got like prison rules now, going out, going out here with some people, which is pretty dark. But
This
um,
was another part that kind of brought down the 16 candles in the 80s and 90s teenage comedies is you would see somebody like Anthony Michael Hall sitting in a car talking to a random stranger.
mhm.
And I could just see that, just still spilling his beans about his life, happy go lucky. You don't even know how he got there. You don't even care. He's just there. And that I kind of like that element of it. But he's not feeling, I mean, he's feeling sorry for himself, but he's also just out open and outgoing to everyone still.
Yeah,
It's
like
just
he's
and
the
going
kind of
with the flow.
yeah. I mean, I can understand why people would like his pizza if he's the type of guy that's that communicative and relatable and what have you. Like,
Hmm.
and then also he's got those good recipes. Yeah, it works out well. Now, fortunately, Owen is kind of saved by the damsel, so to speak, because we
Hmm.
have this woman named her, who's named her, but we call her Vivian. And like the writers call her Vivian. She's the most described as the most beautiful woman in the entire world. Like that's it. Just nothing else. Just that's it, who it is. And she sees Owen in the limousine and gives him like a really seductive smile. And it's described as like it's a connection between Owen and this Vivian character. And she, of course, crosses the street and heads into the alley to knock on the steel door. And Owen is just so enamored. He cannot let this woman slip by. And so, of course, he rushes after her. She gets into the club. Owen bangs on the door. The black dress bouncers telling him to go away, and he wants to get in. He's like, "What's the cover? I can pay 20, 25." And of course, the black dress is just scoffing at him, and he pulls out his ring box and he says, like, "This engagement ring is over $7,000. Please, just let me inside so I don't let this person get away." And that works. He gets into the club, and by the time they get into the club, we get the Chiron countdown of like how many hours are left in this free for all sexcapade sort of thing, and it's like 3.5 hours. So time is getting short, and of course, like Hannah is dancing and she's looking around the club, and then her new friend Nia is saying, "Hey, guess what? I'm leaving, and I'm going on a helicopter, and it's going to be fun." And Hannah is now completely abandoned in this club as girls are pairing off with guys. And then she spots, Douglas Pierce, and it looks like he's making a beeline for her, but he ends up passing her by and connects with the Vivian.
Yeah,
So
I like
you're
that.
like, oh no, the man of her dreams has gone to the most beautiful woman in the world, and he takes her hand and they go to this upstairs like a booth or what have you, and start chatting it up. And what's funny is uh, Hannah goes to the bar, she slides into an open spot, and who's sitting right next to her but Owen, who is now downing absinthe. So again, wherever Hannah seems to go, Owen is already there ahead of time.
Yep.
And so they start having a conversation, and Jake, I want to throw it to you here because this part here is not just a conversation, it's what Owen does with Hannah to try and help her out getting Douglas Pierce's attention. Why don't you like share what this new revelation was that was presented to in the story?
Yeah, yeah, because he was explaining to her how he got there, how he got his way, and kind of lets her know that, or at least lets the audience know that he gave her Claudia the engagement ring, or lets her know because we already knew. But she's feeling like, she confides in him, and she's saying, uh, um, "There's the guy I want to be with," and he's like, "Go talk to her." And,
Yeah.
and him, his optimism and his happy-go-lucky is just go do it, just go do it. And she doesn't want to, and he's like, "Come on, I'll help you." And he takes her out on the uh I like how he says, "Oh, they're kissing," and he catches her, and she's like, "What?" That whole like
Oh yeah, yeah,
picture
yeah.
that scene of like, "Oh, now I got your," he's doing it to tease her, but also to motivate her. And I like it. He cues the band, and he goes and he heads out into the dance floor, and they kind of got a visual of just the two of them dancing, and she realizes he's actually a good dancer. And and while he's helping her, you also get the kind of, we the audience see that they're actually pretty good for each other, and
Yeah.
maybe they're realizing it as well, but yet they're still helping each other.
Hmm.
And
And the dancing works too. Like that's the other part. As soon as the thing ends, there's a round of applause,
yeah.
and and all of a sudden Douglas is no longer looking at the most beautiful woman in the world. His eyes are all on Hannah. And what's even funnier is that we cut to a moment later where Owen is sitting at the bar. He's stirring his drink. He's watching Hannah and Douglas kind of hit it off, and then um she Vivian passes by. She's with this like older guy. She's wearing an emerald earring. They go into a private room. Owen doesn't even notice at this point because his eyes are still on Hannah. But as Hannah and Douglas are coming down, Hannah tells Owen like yeah, we're leaving. And she says like thanks for the help, and he's like happy for you. And she she Hannah says hey, just in case, and hands him the blue Trojan condom.
Mhm.
And Owen's like, well, what about your boyfriend there? And she's like, he has one already. And then here's another point that's interesting. Hannah finally tells Owen her name because she hasn't said it by at this point. She didn't want to. And so yeah, that's basically it. They go into Douglas's building, which is this really elaborate like penthouse. Um, there it's right off the elevator. It has a beautiful look and everything. And yeah, they start, making out. Um, things are going good. And of course, Hannah says, we got to stop for a second because I got to use the washroom. I've had to go for a while.
For
And
a few
so,
hours now, yeah.
yeah. And Douglas is like, yeah, sure. Well, okay, go right ahead. I'm not going to move at all. I'm going to be right here. And then we get this kind of funny thing where like Hannah, as she's kind of looking around the apartment, she's heading to the bathroom. She sees a box of Gianni's Pizza, which is Owen's shop, and she starts thinking a little bit about Owen for a moment. But then, yeah, she heads to the washroom, and we cut off from there because we go back into the train depot, the weird underground club thing, and one guy is talking about how this is the best night of the year, right? And I was like, no, I don't think it's the best night of the year. I like the other nights more. And and then the guy has left, and of course someone is talking behind him and asking like, well, who is she, the woman? And Owen, before he turns around, he's like, oh, there's no woman. Um, and then he sees, oh, it's beautiful Vivian is talking to him, and she's, you know, kind of giving him, a little bit more attention. And we find out that, yeah, like, you clearly have someone on your mind. And Vivian talks about how, like, yeah, I have a guy on my mind too, and I see his face sometimes in others, even when people look nothing like him. But then she gets really close to Owen. She says, but you, however, you look just like him. And the first words out of Owen's mouth is like, well, I can't pay you. And she's like, I don't care. And you're like, oh, she's being honest. She's not looking for this isn't a Mark, this isn't another John or anything. Like she's just like, nope, you I'm telling you the truth. And Owen is pretty happy. And of course, Vivian is saying, like, I have roommates. Do you have a place? And Owen says, yeah, I definitely have a place. Because remember, it's like 3 a.m. right now. A lot of people should be asleep. And what's funny is Owen says, yeah, I'm going to take you to my mom's because she's probably finished right with her night. Uh, and so we cut back to Douglas's penthouse. And I thought this was kind of funny because um, Hannah's going to the bathroom and she's got like an Austin Powers moment where she's trying to like empty her bladder as quickly as possible and she's getting impatient. And but when she's finally done, she like go washes her hands, she looks in the mirror, she's super excited, does a silent scream, all the stuff that she's giddy about because, this girlhood fantasy is coming true. When she gets back into the main living room, she sees Douglas on the sofa exactly where he was before, but this time he's not breathing, but he does happen to have a bottle of Viagra next to him on the end table and a massive erection. uh, where you're wondering if it's full rigor mortis, if he is dead or not. We don't know because we do a quick cut back to, basically Owen telling the driver like, "This is where we go," and the driver's like, okay, but don't forget our deal." And Owen's like, "Tomorrow, extra large pepperoni, free," and and then the driver's like, "Then sex next year," and Owen's like, "Maybe Sal, maybe."
I liked that bit of interaction with him because he was by that time that you knew a lot about Owen and he was funny.
Yeah, he
But
was
I like
funny.
that.
He had some charm to him. Owen, like, Owen and Vivian, they get into his family's home, but they head straight for the basement to try and be out of sight, out of sound from his mom and I guess Rick if he's spending the night. And they get hot and heavy and everything's going really well and she's got this perfect body and then all of a sudden um she screams and it freaks Owen out. And then Vivian starts pointing off camera and she's like, "Who is that? Who is that?" And there's movement in the dark and there's shuffling and all of a sudden it looks like there's a cage and there's a raccoon in it. And Owen manages to turn on the lights and the naked guy in the cage is Rick. And he's got this fake lion's mane on him. And what's crazy is that his mom starts coming down into the basement. She's dressed as like a lion tamer. And everyone and Owen is freaking out, and then Vivian is so freaked out, she just grabs her clothes, she gets up, she bolts out, doesn't even like acknowledge Owen anymore. And Owen is like saying, "I thought you guys would be done by now." And of course, his mom is like, "Does it look like we're done?" Um, and then of course Owen asks, like, "Do you know when you will be?" And
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 I like that. Do you know when you will be?
and then both of them in perfect lockstep says, "Just get out." And of course, now Owen is back. He's reset back to square one. He's back on the street all alone, no woman. I mean, the only thing he has that he didn't have before is the condom. That's it. Uh, and and he decides, the only place I have to go is the place I was going to go before Hannah took off, and that was the pizza shop. So that's where he heads off. He heads to the pizza shop, tries to go there and just sleep off the rest of the night, not care anymore. With like an hour left, in this part, he's given up at this point. And Hannah, of course, is exiting the hospital. Douglas Pierce is not dead. He's regained consciousness, and his family is now there at the hospital, and she's all alone and starving. So she makes an effort, and walks past Gianni's Pizza, sees that the light is on, even though the sign is closed, and then starts banging on the door. Where Owen kind of like comes to, sees that she's there, and he agrees, "Okay, fine. You're hungry. I'll make you a pizza, but you gotta pay full price plus a tip." And Of course, Hannah's like, okay, fine. And this is where we kind of like get, okay, this is their denouement sort of moment. The night's rounding down. They're not getting anywhere. Things are kind of lousy. And so, uh, Owen has made the pizza. They're relaxing. They're sitting. They're eating it at the table. And Hannah start, kind of maybe coming to terms with maybe, if this is my only option, might as well. But before she can do anything, Owen's phone starts to vibrate, and he picks it up, and the caller is Claire, Clarissa, and we're gonna cut off there for the spoiler talk because we you have to read the script to find out. Does he take the call? Does he turn off the call? Does he stay with Hannah? Does he leave? Like, you've got to read the script to find out. But I will say, up until this point, I was surprisingly more entertained than I was expecting to be. What about you, Jake?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Because the concept of it implies it could go anywhere.
Yeah.
It could be cheap thrills, and it surprisingly has a lot of heart. And so so it is good. The concept of it led you to just experience that. Maybe it's the contrast of it. They're not different than it, but they're participating in it, but they're really not participating in it successfully. Yeah, just a lot of heart because the
Yeah,
character is good characteristic, good characters.
it's good characters. It's more of a romance film with comedy peppered in than a solid comedy with romance.
Yeah.
It's a little off balance that way, but I think it works for the characters. Uh, I really liked the dynamic because we only do get really a handful of scenes between Owen and Hannah compared to the rest of the time they're mostly on their own dealing with the crazy world around them and things that are bringing themselves to this point. And and they even make a joke about how like, yeah, next year is going to be worse because next year's a leap year. And then you realize, oh yeah, well, one extra day.
Yeah.
Um, and 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 the thing is that you're realizing that the want for sex is hiding the fact that there's a want for intimacy. And I like the contrast where everybody there is just trying to have a good time. They're sowing their oats, so to speak. And here you have Owen and Hannah, two characters that are trying to convince themselves to do the same thing, but deep down they want something more. And even though some of what they say and do with each other would hint at a possible romance, what we end up getting, or like I'm not, what we end up getting up into the point at the pizza shop is these two are finding themselves more comfortable as friends than romantic partners. And there's a little bit of like trying to entertain the idea of could the potential be there or no. And I thought there was something to that because the shortcut, the easy answer, the one that'd be cathartic for the audience would be that they hook up right away and all solved and your Bob's Your Uncle movie's over.
Yeah.
But the writer doesn't make that choice, and he doesn't make what he does with the characters after that pizza shop an easy play for them. And I completely understand why this script was number one on last year's blacklist. What sort of thoughts do you have, Jake, on this overall?
Yeah. I definitely not surprised this number one, and I'm very happy to see a comedy and a romantic comedy number one because uh, I feel like one of the things that are being greatly you got to give date movies. This is a date movie.
Yeah.
The concept of it. So I had an interesting. I told my wife about it. I described the log line to her and said, "Would you be interested?" She looks at me, kind of rolls her eyes, and goes, "No." Would you see that? Would this movie appeal to you? Then I started to describe it to her, and she went, "Well, maybe." Because she's not gonna. I'm not gonna lie, she likes, your Pride and Prejudice, your Jane Austen. She wants your traditional love story. She loves those.
Yeah.
They're tried and true, and the whole idea of trying to get a gimmick out there to, like my first impression was, oh, this is just a gimmick, just trying to blend two things. I think it's good. Again, I'm not critical of it, but I am wary of it going, it's just a gimmick. But no, it's on a deeper thought, I went, okay, this writer needed to bring an innocence to a world filled with sex.
Hmm.
And he did that um, by, the plot, only one night a year makes it with the idea that it needs to bring back romance, but yet it pushes everybody into more. It's just one night of depravity. But we see that through this story that the innocence and the romance is there, even if the world they're living in isn't. And but you need to have some innocence to be able to tell a good story, a love story, because you got to have somebody who's, you can't just, like you said, you can't just have the instant payoff of them hooking up right away. You've got to have the tension of wanting to see it happen, but also uh, it, one of my favorite things about it is also one of my biggest criticisms of it. When I when I think of like the CW, I think of 20-year-olds pretending to be teenagers living like people in their 30s.
Yeah.
And I go, but that's kind of our world. We're a lot more mature in some ways than we should be. But how do you get that innocence of teenagers back in a world where you can't just do a teenage innocent movie? People seem to be past that. So they do want the shocking element. You are competing with movies that have deeper themes and natures, and so how do you draw people in and get and tell that good story, and at least to set up an element where you could play on those tropes of the innocent, awkward guy out with a snooty, snooty girlfriend, the girl who keeps looking for these guys that seem that like they're right, but they're not.
Hmm.
You know, it would be hard to set up without trying to set it back in the 80s, set it back in the 90s, set it back in any time. It doesn't matter when it is. Everybody looks to the past as that's when times were innocent because that's when you were innocent.
Right.
And so it was a really interesting way. I also my first when they talked about a senator introducing the bill, I'm like, oh, kind of rolled my eyes and went, "Ugh, I hope there's not a political element.
Right.
And not because you can't tell the political element, but because our world is hyper focused on it. And I don't want it to be in absolutely everything. And yet
Exactly. And yet
it
they did it
wasn't
as
a
a
big
joke.
element.
Yeah.
What's that?
And yet the way that they did it is pure a joke and not anything more than that. Like that's
Exactly. And that was kind of refreshing because just let a politician be a politician and
yeah.
an act of a political thing be without some ulterior motive. And that was refreshing because it didn't have it. But yet that's how on guard and how guarded I am by it because, you know, I don't even want to
Because you've
see a
been
politician
yeah,
come in.
because a lot of people have been burned pretty severely when they weren't on guard for it. But
Yeah, I don't want to be reminded that I don't want to be constantly reminded of that's there and I need to think the way this person wants me to think.
mhm.
I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
it is plain silly to go, oh, we're going to try and govern morality. That's a silly concept because that's an internal thing, right?
Exactly. And the other part too is like, well, who gets to define morality?
Right,
And why should the majority heed that decision to this one individual or to this one group of individuals? And there's always like an ulterior motive to that as well. And I thought that was it's a really big subtext in here because you've this writer has given us a premise that the overwhelming majority has decided this is how we're going to live life now. We're going to only have one day a year where people who are not married are allowed to have sex, and then people who are married can have sex anytime they want, have kids, etc., what have you. It's got this ripple effect to it as well because here's the other aspect too. I mean, because this could be a franchise film. You could do have other stories, one of which being is like, well, what happens if your random hookup on that night creates a child? And
Yeah,
now the next year, you've got a 9 month old, or no, sorry, you've got like a 3, 4 month old, and now you can't go out to hook up again because you need to get a babysitter, and getting a babysitter on that night is going to be incredibly expensive, and you're a single mother and what have you. Or you have the other ones where people hooked up, they have a kid, and then the one guy is like, listen, you're pregnant. I want to marry you. And then, the woman's like, well, no, because that wasn't in the cards. It's supposed to be unfettered. And so you have all these avenues to explore about how such an idea of imposing a restriction on a natural action that is completely harmless when it's between consenting adults is counterintuitive to the very moral clause that is being imposed. Um,
yeah,
and I like the fact that this script kind of stimulates those ideas without telling you those ideas at all. Because as you're
right.
seeing these two people just, you know, they're seeking something of romance. It gets taken away with them. They try to hide that pain by going into lust, which is basically what a lot of people do when they're trying, especially when it comes to sex. Is there's a whole um, kind of ethereal culture where if you're hurting and you just need something to distract you, sex is one option. The other options are food, sometimes they're movies or fiction or what have you. But there
Sure.
it's some sort of vice that is doing that to really kind of rob you of your own agency or rob you of dealing with your emotions in a healthy way. And you're just filling that using it to fill a void. And these two are going through that process, and then as they get closer and closer to the end of that period, they're realizing the truth, which is that yeah, they're looking for something more than what they've been looking for at this time, and maybe it's in their best interest to not try and force it and just live a regular life without having to plan and focus on that one day of a year where you can finally, you know, get that ecstasy with another person. And also kind of realizing that if it's only one day a year, it can have meaning, but it can also be very disposable.
Yeah,
And I was like there's depth to the script. I mean, it's kind of a throwback to like it's got the premise of a teen sex comedy, but it's got a depth of romance to it like Love Story from like the 70s.
yeah. And I would have never thought that would have mingled, you know, without having people in their 20s in Arrested Development.
Yes.
But in reality, this society had forced a certain amount of the Arrested Development, but it was consistent, you know.
Oh,
But that's what
exactly.
brought them back to their innocence of their teenage years, which, people that's one of the criticisms people would give to these teenage comedies because they're like, we're fixating on kids, you know.
Hmm.
How's an adult supposed to watch a movie like that? It's only good for teenagers watching their fellow teenagers. But the whole reason that teenage comedies appeal is because it doesn't matter when it happened to you. There was a time when you were looking for the romance and
Yeah.
you were getting past the whatever celibacy or whatever, and so it doesn't matter when that happened, but that's when, it was easy to just put on. That's a time frame that we all naturally pin to
Oh yeah, it's that
for
coming of
that
age
material.
moment, right?
Yeah,
Where
coming of
where the
age.
superficial kind of like fades away and the substance kind of comes to the surface.
Yeah.
And that's what this script does. That's what some of the classic romantic comedies kind of do. Um, and this one has got some good jokes, and it's also got like an affable main character. And yeah, so with that being said, Jake, would you give this script a green light or a pass?
Oh, I'd give it a green light.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I'm in the exact same boat. This is very deserving of a green light. This is a great story. great characters, very interesting premise, a premise that can get people talking. Like, yeah, it's a romantic comedy of sorts, but the sci-fi element of, a government imposing a law, having a biosensor burned into or tattooed onto your wrist for the rest of your life that's going to control your sexual actions. Um, that opens up that's a way to like kind of meld in nerds with women and men who wear their hearts on their sleeves. Like you're kind of pairing these two types of people together to both have something enjoyable out of this type of story. So my props, I tip my hat to Travis Braun, who made a really great story.
Oh,
Uh,
yes, absolutely.
with that being said, Jake, any final thoughts before we call it an evening?
Yeah, I was gonna say this movie could be fun, really fun for a creative marketing team
Yeah,
because you could market a couple of different ways to try to reach out to men, to reach out to couples, to reach out to women, but not you wouldn't have to give away a lot. You could just show a certain premise that's in the market. It's in the script. You could show one aspect of it, and it's a date movie, not a breakup movie.
yeah.
And that's what I'm tired of. Is the only comedies, the only romance comedies we're getting anymore are breakup movies. So this is I surprising, very very good surprise. And yeah, everyone finish reading the script. It's a good one.
Absolutely. With that, I want to thank everyone for taking the time to listen to this evening's show. I hope you all had a wonderful Easter. We'll be back, of course, live next week to cover another screenplay. With that being said, I want to thank Jake for coming back to talk about this one. This is a great conversation. And thank all of you guys out there for listening. And never forget, guys, when it comes to great story, it all starts with the script.